extreme heat today. Even though we're cool, I was afraid some people wouldn't come out. So we are delighted for every one of you who is here today, because you're going to have a treat for a program. My name is Bev Butterfield. I'm a volunteer here at the Newmarket Library. If you have some extra time in your life, this is a fabulous place to volunteer. Ellen and Jeff volunteer, Karen, Becky, and we're always looking for one more good volunteer. So speak to us if that's of interest to you. I like to start by doing an advertisement for next month's program, and then we'll pull back and do our focus on today. Our program next month is going to be on Sunday, July 14th. And I had wanted for a long time, and I finally found someone who could talk about doing genealogical research, because I know a lot of people are into that. And our speaker has written at least 3 books or more. She's very precise in the way she validates her research, and she'll be talking about how to really get to accurate when you're recording the lineage. And then in addition that her name is Marie Rundquist. She lives in Woodstock up behind Muse Winery, and she used that sleuthing from the genealogy studies to uncover some hidden stories in her family. And so there are a couple reasons people will be interested in her talk, partially because of the whole piece about the genealogical research, but her family history comes through the Acadian exiles who were kicked out of Nova Scotia by the British and came south, and there's a whole historical piece and some stories that she came across as a result of that. And as a result of her advocacy, the state of Maryland actually put up a historical trust marker in Princess Anne, Maryland, as a tribute to the Acadians who came there. So look forward to seeing you for that. A couple of other quick announcements. Karen, give a quick announcement about your table in the back.
We're having, in addition to children's summer reading, we're having adult and teen summer reading. The table's right there as you grab. It's like a card table size. You register, you read, you turn in things that you read, and your name might be drawn for a weekly prize.
And then one more, I just wanted to give a shout out. One of our very interesting speakers a few months ago was Tammy Colors, and Tammy is here. Tammy and 2 of her friends go together and write books in the cozy mystery genre. It was fascinating to hear them talk about their whole process of how they write and how they do that. Tammy has a book that she's working on, and she's looking for beta testers. You want to mention that real quick?
Yeah, I'm ready I have a few beta readers already, but if you like the cozy mystery genre and are interested in reading, like being a beta reader for me, just leave me your email address and I'll be happy to send it to you.
Right.
And just a disclaimer, it's not a thriller, it's a cozy mystery, like small town, character driven cozy mystery. So don't look for Lee Child like this.
So if that's your thing, Tammy could use your help. And I am going to be handing around a sign-in sheet. If you, I would like every person to sign in. If you are not getting our email notices that advertise each of these programs, direct to your inbox. If you want it, very clearly, put your email address beside it. If you're getting them or don't need that, just sign in for us. I'd appreciate that. And then let's get to why you came today. I have known Drew and his family members. I was saying his mom was one of our early library speakers about 11, 12 years ago. And the family just does amazing work and interesting work. Drew is a blacksmith. One of the things that touches my heart about Drew's story is he told me about as a young boy, they were homeschooled, talked about coming in and using the library and the importance of the library resources. I know we could build out what we have, but Drew was a volunteer at the library when he was a young boy, and his career has continued. He is successful enough as an artisan that he was able to stop a full-time job in the fine home building and historical home reconstruction to become a blacksmith artisan. And he has worked at this for over 20 years. I also enjoy, as I've listened to Drew's story, he is very appreciative of the folks who've mentored you, that you've learned from, and truly I think blacksmithing is one of those skill sets that has been handed down through the ages. And so Drew is also co-founder of Alexander Brothers, a group of very fine craftsmen who lives in Rockingham County with his wife and 4 children. One of his children is here. Drew, I'll turn it over to you and thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
You took the first 5 minutes of my speech.
Oh no, they weren't listening to me anyway.
I'd like to just expound on the fact that you talked about the importance of the resources of the library. And it was very important to me learning about building traps in the woods and, you know, exploring the forests and learning how to start fires with flint and steel. All that stuff fueled my imagination and helped me become who I am today as an artist and as a blacksmith. And so the library is very important to me. And I'll put a plug in for Becky. She was instrumental in that. She was a librarian when I was a child and played an important role in my life. And I gave her a list of books that I thought would be great to add to the Newmarket Library, and she's purchased one of them, The Blacksmith's Craft. So whoever wants, I don't know if this is available for checkout yet, but this is a great book. It's a UK school curriculum for trade schools. It was written in the 1950s, and it talks about forging agricultural hardware and implements in the UK in the 1950s. So it's a neat read, or flip through, even if you don't want to blacksmith. And if you want to learn about blacksmithing, many blacksmiths have started with this book. And I have the original books that I actually brought to show you. These are the first editions of that school curriculum. There's 3 different books. It's much cooler in here. This week in my shop, it's been 110 degrees, 115 around the forging area, so I have to start and stop, and I've started getting out there earlier. I tried to start at 5:30 the other morning, and that was a lot more pleasant. I'm not really used to public speaking, so I prepared something that I wrote down. I'm going to read that. That'll keep me on track. And then at the end, I will have a time for questions, and I want to have some engagement with you guys. If anybody has any questions, save them to the end. I'll give you guys a time for questions. I'm going to provide several different resources for those that may want to go further with this or look into blacksmithing a little bit more. And then there's table pieces that I brought, samples of my work. Feel free to pick them up, handle them. Probably not going to be able to hurt them. And Wayne dropped a box of them earlier, and they're fine. So it's iron, it's really strong stuff. And there's 2 scrapbooks on the back table of different projects that I've done over the last 2 years. Feel free to look through those. There's also pictures of me as a child and the various blacksmith shops, how that evolved. And then up here I have some of my favorite blacksmithing books. I have a library of 300 to 400 blacksmithing books and hundreds of blacksmithing magazines and pictures, memorabilia. And I selected some of the ones that I reference frequently and brought them out for you guys to look at. So afterwards, feel free to come up. There's one piece here that I would ask, if you touch it, please be very careful. It's an original catalog for blacksmiths from 1883. So use your best judgment. You're welcome to look at it, just be very, very careful with it. And it's right here. So as I get started, I'm going to pass this around. This is my daily forging hammer. This is the primary tool that I use in the shop, and I thought you guys might like to see that. Welcome. Thank you all for joining me today to learn just a little bit about blacksmithing. First, to provide you with some context, here's a bit about me, to add to what Bev said. My name is Drew Alexander. I'm a full-time artist blacksmith. Drawn to blacksmithing after seeing local blacksmith Bill Moss, many of you, or some of you may remember him, at the Old Time Festival in October of 2001, I got my start with an apprenticeship at the Frontier Culture Museum in Stanton, Virginia at 14 years old. While pursuing blacksmithing on evenings and weekends, I grew professionally in the fine home building and historical home reconstruction field with local home builder Jay Hafner. Hafner taught me to always say yes to a project even if it was new or intimidating. This approach shaped my confidence and success in taking on challenging projects. For nearly 23 years, I have honed my craft through self-education, learning and leading in my local blacksmithing guild, reading books, and networking with other artisan blacksmiths online and at conferences throughout the country. Most recently, I was mentored by the late artist blacksmith Noel Putnam. Noel is most recognized for building 3 iron gates for the National Cathedral in Washington, D.C. Behind one of these gates is the tomb of Helen Keller. Through a friendship with Noel and Providence, I began the process of buying Putnam's shop in 2022. His influence on my craft continues through the tools I use and the wisdom he passed on. I left my full-time work in October of 2021 to pursue artisan blacksmithing full-time. I specialize in client-led projects and prefer large pieces that allow room for artistic creativity and customization. This Benjamin Disraeli quote has hung in my shop since 2010. One secret to success in life is to be ready for your opportunity when it comes. Every time I have had an opportunity that was pivotal, I've jumped on it. Knowing it might not come around again, I currently live in Rockingham County with my wife and 4 children. I'd like to speak with you today about the roots of blacksmithing in this area, what it meant to be a blacksmith, and how that's formed our ideas of what blacksmithing should be. Then I will share with you where blacksmithing is today in 2024 and provide you with some resources where, if you choose to, may further your knowledge or learn the trade yourself. Let's start with a question. What is blacksmithing? This definition may vary based on who you ask. So I'll ask you, when you think of blacksmithing, what comes to mind? What is blacksmithing? I'll take hands. And Trevor?
Manipulation of metal when it's at a plastic state.
You've been reading my notes. Anybody else?
I was thinking of barriers.
Farriers, okay, so horseshoeing? Yep. Let's take 2 or 3 more people. Get some engagement here. What is blacksmithing? Well, what comes to mind? Go ahead.
Swords.
Swords, making swords, okay. Anybody else? Yep.
Even cooking utensils.
Cooking utensils, yep. All right. To better understand what the life of a historical blacksmith looked like, let us look at a local example from the 19th century. To do this, I will reference a local history book, Mountain Valley People, by Mary Marie Kuntz Arrington. Now, I have printed off an excerpt from this book, and I'm going to be talking about this. While I'm going over this, I'm going to go ahead and pass this around. It's very interesting. And I think this library has this book, I think. I have a copy of it at home anyway. But in this book, Miss Arrington extensively documents the life and work of a local blacksmith named John T. Reimel. His shop was in operation along Mountain Valley Road in Rockingham County between Fridley's Gap and the now lost to history community of Oakwood. Mr. Reimel kept a detailed journal of his daily work as both a blacksmith and a coffin maker, beginning during the Civil War until his untimely death by a falling tree, November 20th, 1902. He was 71 years old. Here are some excerpts that illustrate the daily tasks and local economy of a country blacksmith in Rockingham County. I'm going to read through some of his journal. May 27th, 1863, 22 nails, 50 cents. September 28th, 1863, making corn cutter, 25 cents. November 2nd, 1863, making butcher knife, 50 cents. Credit by 2 pounds of lard, 25 cents. March 3rd, 1864, sharpening 2 shovels, 14 cents. June of 1864, 8 new shoes, $1.50. Credit by coal. July 13th, 1864, putting on set of buggy tires and repairing buggy, $3.50. March 16th, 1865, fixing screws, 25 cents. Who here has to fix screws? August 11th, 1865, steeling an axe, 62 cents. Now, for those of you that don't know, steeling an axe would be forge welding a new piece of steel onto the edge of the axe when it's worn back. September 7th, 1866, mending crank to windmill, 25 cents. December 3rd, 1866, mending iron kettle, 56 cents. Chain to door, 13 cents. 1 plug of tobacco, 20 cents. 4 tires cut and welded, $2. Tires back then were made of iron. Plug of tobacco, 13 cents. May 8th, 1867, mending bridle bit, 20 cents. February 25th, 1870, set of hinges, 25 cents. June 19th, 1870, scythe hung, 25 cents. Anybody know what it means to hang a scythe? It would be to put a handle on a scythe. If you say you hang a hammer, you put a handle on it. February 1873, hoe made with steel, 37 cents. Two mowers made with steel, 75 cents. I don't know what a mower is. It may have been a type of scythe or grass cutter. 1877, mattock mended, 20 cents. 1 gallon of molasses, 63 cents. Steel on grub hoe and sharpened, 31 cents. So what type of work do we see here? Sharpening services, shoeing horses, functional, mechanic work, farm tool repair, welding repairs, hardware supply. These are all essential tasks in a community, even in the 21st century. But are they representative of a blacksmith today? Could a blacksmith make a living performing these tasks today in our community? Times have changed, and the answer is likely no. Too often worn-out tools, shovels with broken handles, or dull knives are discarded and replaced with new and expensive ones. The once American ethic of taking care of our things and mending them when they break has been replaced by a throwaway society and an economy which encourages cheap and expensive goods, too often sacrificing quality, beauty, and our ethics. Horses and wagons are no longer a part of our daily lives. They've been replaced by the automobile. Cars and trucks are maintained by mechanics. Tires are rubber instead of iron. If we need hardware like nails, screws, or hooks, the local home good or hardwood store is in ready supply. And it is certainly nearly unheard of to save old bent nails or screws to repair and use again. Welding is now done electrically in a fabrication shop and is no longer a skill required by the blacksmith by fire with hammer and anvil. I want to pause here and interject a definition of what blacksmithing is and how it compares to the work done in a welding fabrication shop. Blacksmithing, like Trevor said, is manipulating iron in its plastic state. A welding shop, fabrication shop, or machine shop cuts, turns, or mills metal to a desired shape or size, then welds, bends, or screws pieces together. While there may be overlaps in methodology between blacksmiths and fabrication or machine shops, the important delineation is that blacksmiths forge their work. Heat is applied at the forge in order to soften the material and change its cross-section. Methods of joinery may vary, but the essential thing here is forging. Let's compare the work of Mr. Riemel in the 19th century to a blacksmith today. Here are some examples of work that I've done over the last couple of years as a full-time blacksmith. Household goods. Forge a bacon press. Pot trivet. Decorative wall hanging. Dining tables, kitchen islands, side tables, and coffee tables, with wood tops, of course. Plant hangers, kettle stands, art sculptures, spatulas, spoons, and knives for the kitchen. Hardware, wall hooks, shelf brackets, door pulls, knobs and latches, door knockers, chest hinges. Architectural work, sign hanger for business, gates for porches and decks, decorative grill to cover stone well, driveway and garden gates, hand railing indoor and out, balcony and stair railing, fireplace screen. I'll add to my notes here that the majority of the work that brings money into my shop is architectural blacksmithing. The rest of the pieces just kind of fill in the cracks. While there remains some similarity in tasks, the work done today tends to focus more on what my late mentor Noel called house jewelry. While the market for repairing agricultural tools and shoeing horses has all but disappeared, the demand for architectural ironwork and other fine home decor has increased. The blacksmith today can supply quality iron goods that you simply cannot get anywhere else. The market for the 21st century blacksmith is driven by people with a particular ethic and worldview. At my company, Alexander Brothers, we've summarized 3 values which represent this worldview. Create beauty. Even if we only make someone smile, we want to make something beautiful every day. Build for the future. If we're doing the work, it might as well be the kind that lasts forever. In everything we do, we seek to fight against planned obsolescence. Make craftsmanship accessible. We strive to make the beauty of fine craftsmanship accessible to everyone, sharing knowledge, skills, and encouragement with everyone, inviting them to both craft and treasure the crafted. There are still those who share these values. People who want to purchase heirloom quality goods that both last a lifetime and add pleasure and beauty to their lives. It is in this that the 21st century blacksmith can thrive. In conclusion, I invite you to consider a blacksmith if you have need of anything iron in your life. To choose local craftsmen who produce heirloom quality goods whenever possible, and to consider the value in adding art into your life, something beautiful that simply exists to make you smile. I would also like to encourage any interested in blacksmithing as either a career or simply a hobby. Both are possible and there's support available. And for those interested in resources of education for blacksmith groups and classes, here are a few locally. The Virginia Institute of Blacksmithing. Has anybody heard of this place? Virginia Institute of Blacksmithing is in Waynesboro. It is the only artistic blacksmithing school certified to operate by the State Council of Higher Education in Virginia. VIB offers classes for hobby blacksmiths as well as a certification program for artistic blacksmiths. This is on par with a welding certification. The Shenandoah Valley Blacksmithing Guild. This guild has been meeting for nearly 30 years. The group is open to the public and meets the second Thursday of each month in Waynesboro, Virginia. For those interested, you can contact me. Open Forge. This is a group of blacksmiths that meet in my shop the last Thursday of each month. We are currently working through the Kosira books, which is the book that was donated to the library. Opportunities at a national level include, to name a few, the John C. Campbell Folk School in Brasstown, North Carolina. They offer weekend and week-long classes by skilled blacksmiths. Abana just had their 50th anniversary. The Artist Blacksmith Association of North America is a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to preserving, promoting, and sharing technical skills and design excellence in the blacksmith community. They offer educational workshops, technical and art publications, grants, awards, conferences, and exhibitions honoring the metal arts. Abana has been putting this magazine out for 50 years, and it's the best blacksmithing magazine in the world. There's very few blacksmithing magazines, but this is the best one. So I'm going to pass this around. The American College of Building Arts in Charleston, South Carolina. Blacksmithing students learn a broad range of metalworking techniques with an emphasis on historical and contemporary design. As far as I know, this is one of the only colleges in the country with an accredited program focused on blacksmithing. If you guys are interested in a weekend getaway, check out the talented historical interpreters at Colonial Williamsburg, featuring my friends Ken Swartz, Mark Sperry, and Ashlyn Harris. The Museum of American Frontier Culture, where I was trained, featuring blacksmith A.J. Graham. Mount Vernon, featuring blacksmith Nicholas Kimball, also a friend. Manassas Battlefield just opened their first blacksmith shop. And historically, there was an African American that had a blacksmith shop on that property. So they hired my African American friend, Matt Walker, out of Luray. And I think last weekend they had their opening day. And Dennis Clem, who's a local blacksmith in Fort Valley, made the large bellows for the forge. For a short time, because his health is going downhill rapidly, you can catch Faye Lecomte, who's 90 years old, blacksmithing at Luray Caverns on Saturdays. So now I want to open it for questions.
So I was wondering about the role of blacksmiths during the Civil War. When you're talking about shoeing horses and so forth, how do they do their work and keep the war production going?
They did have portable blacksmith forges that they would pack on the wagons and carry along, and that was a very important job. They had military farriers, and that's all they did was keep the horses, taken care of. Yeah. And now that's
Implements too, like cooking utensils and all that.
sure. I think most of the goods they were using were supplied. They were, made in a factory, but there would have been blacksmiths to do repairs in the field. Yeah. And now horseshoeing is a specialty. We know them as farriers, and that's all they do is take care of horses' feet. It's more like podiatry, like a podiatrist. Yeah. Anybody else?
And that first list you read of the gentleman from Rockingham County in the 1870s, I think I heard you say a Maddox.
Mattock, yeah. So it's like a pickaxe, but it has a broad hoe on the backside of it. So one side is either a blade. I don't know.
Mattock.
Mattock? Okay. Yeah. I've seen it spelled. If you read these old yeah, he spells phonetically. Some Mattocks have a point on one end and a blade on the other, and some Mattocks have two blades. One's vertical and one's horizontal. Other questions?
I was wondering if you were just going to talk about the process itself. I don't know the process. Could you just describe what?
Yeah. I brought something here to show that. So I'm currently working on a balcony and stair railing for a home in Woodstock, and all of the balusters. I'll throw this bit of trivia out there. Who knows the difference between a baluster and a picket?
A picket.
Mm-hmm. So a picket would be in a fence on the ground. Anytime you go upstairs or on a balcony, they're called balusters, the vertical pieces. Little trivia. So this project that I'm doing, there's a sample that I made for the client that's in the back of the railing. It has about 108 baluster pieces. And I start with each baluster with this piece of 1-inch square bar. It's mild steel, hot rolled, so that means it's made by rolling it through while it's hot, and this is the shape that it comes out. So it's plus or minus about 1 inch.
And where do you get those?
I buy all of my steel from Broadway Metalworks, and they order it in from the steel factories that, comes in by the truckload. So I heat this up in my coal forge. It gets it to about 2,000 degrees. I usually work the metal between 1500 and 2000 degrees. That's kind of your working temperature. And with something this long, I have to work it in thirds. So I can heat up about a third of it, bring that to shape, and then I'll heat the middle up and bring that to shape, and then I'll heat the back up. And with practice, I've gotten to making these balusters with only 3 heats, which means I only have to heat it up 3 times, and I get it to this shape. Now, I could not do that in 3 heats with my small hand hammer that got passed around. It's just simply not enough power. So I have an air-powered power hammer in my shop, which has a 110-pound hammer that goes up and down, and there's a foot treadle that operates a series of air valves and makes the hammer go up and down, and it's very easily controlled. So this is the next step. And this is tapered by eye, and I have to get it to exactly 30 inches, so it takes a lot of practice to get that. At that point, I add this bean shape to the bottom. Now this is done by hand. I do this on the side of my anvil, on the near corner of my anvil, just by hitting it with the hand hammer with a half on, half off face on the corner of the anvil, and then I spread this out into a circle. Think about it like working with Play-Doh. You know, if you have a piece of Play-Doh, you want to make a flower, you take your thumb and you push it until you get a flower profile. I do the same thing with metal. It's just, you can't touch it with your hands, you got to use tools, all right? So this is the next step for this baluster. And up here I've marked with a cold chisel where I'm going to split it. So the next step is I take a chisel and a drift. First I slit it open with a chisel, then I take a drift that's the right diameter round and drive it through while it's hot, and I get this nice split shape. And then it's trimmed to the proper length. So this will be fastened underneath the handrail, and this is riveted to the bottom. And I'll pass this around too. Be careful with it.
How long does it take you to make one?
Oh, okay, so I have 15, if I'm lucky, 15 minutes to forge this. That's the fastest. With kids running in and out and drinking water and checking my phone, it takes, on average, about 20 minutes. And then it's probably another 5 to forge this and drill the hole. 5 to 10 with interruptions. And then this is a little bit more difficult. Marking it, chiseling it, and drifting it is probably 15 minutes on a good day. So that's a little bit more difficult. If you get on a roll, it speeds up, but it's really hot in the shop. So I'll pass this around. You're not going to hurt it, but don't hit anybody in the head.
So do you do them one at a time, or go ahead, you can pass it that way. Do you do them one at a time, or do you a batch of the first unit, a batch of the?
With these, I do them in batches. So I have 108 of these to make, and they are all different. I have about 58 that are just straight like this. So about half of them are just straight. And I have 27 or 28 that are split like that. And then I have 27 or 28 that are straight like this, but at the top they have a 90-degree bend that's very nice detail with a rivet that goes up like this. And there's on the sample in the back, you can see the different types. So yeah, it's a matter of heating it in the coal or gas. I have a gas forge too. That has its own uses. Primarily I use coal and smashing it. Blacksmithing is about squishing and smashing and manipulating the iron. And there's really 2 parts to it. There's the forging part, which is changing the cross section to the shape that you want, squishing it to the shape you want. And then there's joinery. And joinery is its own study in blacksmithing. You have forge welding, which is welding it under heat. You have riveting, putting collars, mechanical fasteners like collars, mortise and tenon joinery, just the same in woodworking. You can do it with metal. And I have samples in the back. Maybe I should let me grab a sample real quick and I'll show you guys. So here's a piece that I did simply to show off, just to take to art shows and take to events like this and show people, because it's large enough to show different examples, but small enough to transport, right? So everything is forged. Even the square bits are forged and the corners are taken down. And I added a nice line here with a chisel, a rounded off chisel. These are forged to a taper and then scrolled. This is a mechanical wrap connection that holds it together. And then each of these three corners have a mortise and tenon joint, which you can see. So I have to punch a hole hot, and then there's a tenon that goes through, and you heat it up and you peen it down. Now you don't want to drill a hole, because if you drill the hole, it removes material and weakens it. And the unique thing about doing mortise and tenon in iron, and you can't do this in wood, is that you can start by punching a very small hole. Like in this material, I would start with a 1/4 inch hole, and you get just the tiniest bit of waste, little tiny piece of metal comes out. And then you drift it open. You can drift it from a 1/4 to 3/4 of an inch if you want. And it just swells the metal around it. So it's just as strong as if it didn't have a hole. And then these pieces are individually forged, and then this is forge welded together in the back to make one piece. So this is a great example of an art piece that you could hang on the wall. You could put this in a series up a flight of stairs. You could have a driveway gate with some of these different elements in it. I've done tables that had this and this kind of stuff in the base of the table. And then just to show you these little texture pieces in the leaf are done with punches, and I have a bunch of different shapes, and I have hundreds of different profiles of punches. This is a left and right pair, and they are what make the left and right side of the leaf.
You use the word drift, what does that mean?
So a drift would be if you punch or drill a hole in a piece of metal and you want to make it bigger, you heat the metal up and then you run a drift through it, it's a taper. And as the taper goes through, it pushes it out. So that would be a drift. That's how you would make hammers, axes, anytime you need to do a mortise and tenon joint. Yeah. Any other questions?
What's the thing that is most fun for you, most that gives you the most pleasure?
I like when a client trusts me, because too often one of the first questions I've learned to ask people is, why did you come to me? What I don't like is, because this isn't why I got into the trade. For example, last week a guy called me and he showed me a piece of iron that he could have bought online, and it was just something machine fabricated. But he told me, I'm pricing this around. I want to see if I can find it cheaper. And I didn't like it. I didn't like the way it looked. And then there's people that they want to design it themselves, but they don't understand that this is what I do, right? So if somebody comes to me and trusts me as an artist and lets me ask them questions and explore what they like and their mindset, and then take that and do an art piece for them, they're always much happier. And it lets me explore as an artist. And before I make anything, I start with sketches. In one of the books in the back, there's some different sketches that I've done. So typically I'll ask about 20 questions. Questions like, what's your decorating style in your living room? What sort of vibe do you want this piece to evoke? Are you looking for something that's heirloom quality, or are you trying to work within a budget? Like, these sort of things help me understand the mindset of the person, and then I can design something that they're going to be very happy with. So that's what I like, is exploring my artistic creativity, and the larger canvas I have to do that, the better. Yep.
on the sheet that you gave us and also when you read,
Mm-hmm.
there were things on there like plug tobacco and turkeys. Would that be things he was buying or selling or taking them?
Yeah, so some of those things, if depending on how it's listed in there, like the plug tobacco, I think he was selling because it's listed in with the services that he provided. But then at the bottom of some of those entries, it says credit by. So there's actually instances of credit by labor where somebody would have worked for him in exchange for, they needed to get their tires put on their wagon wheels, so they would work for him and he'd do it. He was bartering for lard and, food and I think there was like flour, coal. Yeah, he did. He shoed some horses in exchange for coal. So that gives you insight into the local economy back then. And I do that a little bit too. Not very much, but occasionally. If somebody has something. I had a client that what they wanted was a little bit more than they could pay for. And so we agreed that they would pay, I think it was like 75% of what I wanted, and then the rest they paid in organic frozen chicken that they raised on their farm. So, yeah, that stuff can still happen. Yeah.
We know that iron rusts, and how do you protect against that?
Yeah, that's a good, iron does rust. Yeah. It's interesting, actually, today we work with A36, which is architectural 36. It's a type of what's referred to as mild steel. It's the type of steel that a welder would use. That's all we have available, and it's got more carbon in it. It's got like 1% to 2% carbon, and that makes it rust even faster. The old material, wrought iron, you can't get it anymore. They don't make wrought iron anywhere in the country. And that stuff would just rust on the surface, and then it would just stay like that for 500 years and never rust anymore. But now the stuff we have today rusts quite quickly. So we do have to protect it. I use paint. There's paint that's designed for boat hulls that's really durable. I put that on iron gates. Sometimes I use powder coating, depending on what the client wants. Indoor stuff you don't have to worry about as much. For example, this piece, I heat it up with a torch, get it to 200 or 300 degrees, and I brush it with a 50-50 mixture of turpentine and linseed oil. And that gets absorbed into the pores of the steel. And then once it cools down, I rub a wax over the surface. There's a wax called Renaissance wax that was the Queen of England commissioned a company to make a wax that would preserve the ironwork in the palace without rusting it, because some wax has acids in it. And they came up with Renaissance wax. It still comes from England. And that's what I put on a lot of my indoor ironwork. Yep.
What is pig iron? Somebody found pig iron on their property, so by the creek.
Yeah.
And what-
So locally, this was especially during the Civil War, there were iron furnaces up and down the valley, and they would go out into the woods and find the iron ore. They dig up all these rocks that are full of iron, and they heat that up in a furnace and melt it down. And at the bottom of the furnace, when they would open, after it got hot enough, they'd open the bottom up, and they had a trench. And the iron had melted out of the rock, and it would flow out into this trench. And then off the side of the trench were little trenches of manageable size. And it looked like a sow with piglets coming off the side. So that's how the term pig iron came about. And then they would take those pig iron pieces, which were large and heavy pieces, but it was manageable. And that would be taken to a refinery where they would hammer it over and over again and get more of the slag and stuff out of it.
Have you
So-
ever made your own?
No. There's a guy in Lexington named Lee Souter that makes his own. There is if you YouTube Iron and Ore Productions, I believe, is a YouTube channel. And Lee Souter has done smelting. He makes small iron furnaces about 6 feet tall and 2 or 3 feet around at the base. He goes out in the woods, and he actually produced 2 DVDs. I have one of them. It's fantastic. But if you look up Lee Souter and Iron and Ore Productions, you can probably find it. It's very fascinating. But it's a big, investment to take the time to do that. Yep. Any other questions? Is anybody here, I know Trevor does, but does anybody here blacksmith, or has anybody blacksmith? Zach in the back, yeah.
Do you any multimedia work with your brothers?
Oh, yeah. Well, I have a YouTube channel, so if you guys...
Well, I mean, mixing ironwork with...
Okay, you said media, I got confused. Yeah, so that's a really cool thing about working with two brothers that have different trades. I have a brother that's a furniture maker and a brother that's a leather worker. So we love to collaborate on projects. Oh yeah, there's a bag my brother Josiah made. So we've done a lot of projects where, especially with tables, there's people that they say, yeah, I want something to make this special. So I say, well, what if we did a forged iron base or forged iron table legs and do a wood top? And then we'll take leather and put it on the feet so it doesn't scratch the floor. Or we might do some upholstery or something like that. So it's neat to collaborate and mix different types of materials. You don't see that a lot in modern furniture. Yeah.
With kind of the specialty of what you do you typically, as far as pricing, do you charge by project, or are you still working an hourly rate somehow? How do you figure all that out?
Yeah. Oh, you're going to get me off on a long rabbit trail.
Well, I didn't need to do that. I know you have your material costs and all that type of thing.
Yeah, I charge by the project. I have an hourly rate in my head that I'm trying to achieve. And I think, I'll try to keep this really short. I feel like as a blacksmith, trying to figure out what to charge, you should look to a comparable trade, somebody that's put in, equal number of hours to perfect their craft, and see what they're charging. So for example, a certified welder who's got his own truck and he's going around welding for people. A lot of the times welders around here, they charge what, $7,500 an hour to drive a truck around, right? Sometimes more. So I think that's a good starting point. If you've invested in your trade and you've got a shop and you've paid for your tools and you've spent years building up your skills, you should at least start there. But I think blacksmiths, or especially artistic blacksmiths, can charge more because it is such a small, niche, high demand trade. So I have an hourly rate in my head. I'm always trying to get about $100 an hour in my shop. Like that's my goal. But the way I price things is I talk to people, find out what they want, come up with a drawing, and we settle on a project. And I give them a price. I scratch out on paper and I think it's going to take this long. And then I'm risking it because I'm saying I'll do this for $3,000, and then it's my job to make that by working to what I thought it would, the number of hours. And sometimes I fall short and I only made $40 an hour and I got to pay for electricity and tools and everything. But sometimes I do a little bit better and it might be $110 an hour and I feel better. So that's how I approach it. If you talk with clients and you base everything on hourly rate and material cost and you add all that up, people tend to lose sight of the item that they're the goal. They lose sight of the goal and they start to focus on the money. And they want to figure out how to save money, and then the quality of the piece goes down. So it's a lot easier to sell a product if you just have a set price. I'll do this for X. And I found that's a lot easier. When you're working by the hour, especially when you're getting down to the end of the project, people start to get pretty antsy. Yep.
You typically work a 5 to 9 or a 9 to 5?
Whenever I can in between watching the kids. My wife and I both work full time. She's a nurse, she works 12-hour shifts, and we homeschool our kids. So I am, when she's home and she's not at work, I'm in the shop. When she's at work, if the kids go down for a nap, I'm in the shop. I wake up in the morning before the kids get up and I go in the shop. And especially with the summer heat, I've started getting up way earlier. It's made a big difference. But I'm out there every day except for Sundays. Yep.
Do you have projects or products or items that you like make a fair amount of just to have available to sell, or do you pretty much always just kind of work on
Yeah.
whatever?
No, I used to. I used to do that, but I've gotten away from that. I found it's easier to make a living just doing custom work. And I get bored easily. I'm very artistically inclined, so I like everything I do to be different than the last. So I think that would be production blacksmithing, and that is a thing. There are very good production blacksmiths out there, especially in New England. There's a lot of hardware blacksmiths. There's more of a demand for that up there. Guys that just make beautiful butterfly hinges and door latches. And they're making the same thing over and over again. There's a lot of them in Tennessee. They're making strap hinges and pinhole hinges for gates. But I do what would be called artist blacksmithing, which is more architecturally driven and more client driven custom work. Yeah. Yep. Anybody else? If you have a question, raise your hand, but I'm going to go over some of these books, and if you guys are interested in blacksmith books, I'm just going to quickly go over this, and then I guess we can mingle and people can look at the things and come up and talk to me if you want. So this is probably the finest photographic collection of colonial ironwork that's called the Sorber Collection. This man's Sorber collected 18th century colonial ironwork, has beautiful black and white photography, and if you want a book of just beautiful black and white pictures of colonial ironwork, this is the best book out there. Here's another book that's similar. I think this is a newer book. It's a Schiffer publishing book, and I picked this up at Colonial Williamsburg the last time I was out there. This is, there's a story with this book. In 2017, I really started to get to know Noel Putnam, one of my mentors, and I asked him if there was one book that I should buy, what should I buy? And he recommended this one. It was the most expensive book that was available. There's a company called Blue Moon Press. They're the only company in the country that only does blacksmithing books. That's what they do. Anything blacksmithing or metalworking, that's what they do. And they published this book. This is a republish of a book by Albert Sohn. And this is one of the best reference books for a blacksmith out there. It's beautiful drawings of ironwork. And I've referenced this constantly. If I want to forge a door knocker, there's half a dozen or more illustrations of door knockers, and I can pull ideas from it. And it's drawings of actual historic ironwork. So this is 3 volumes in one. It's a great book. Nancy Zastrow was a woman, I don't think she's still living. I hope she's not sitting down here somewhere. But she would travel the United States and interview blacksmiths and write their stories. And this is the East Coast book, and she has a West Coast book. And there are local blacksmiths that are still in operation. Glenn Orr, who lives in Berkeley Springs, Randy McDaniel, also in Berkeley Springs. Dale Morris, who currently runs the Virginia Institute of Blacksmithing, is in here. So there's a lot of local blacksmiths in Virginia, Maryland, Pennsylvania in this book. So feel free to look through. And my late great mentor, Noel Putnam, is in this book. And it's got a little bio and talks about what they do. The most prolific author on anything blacksmithing by far is Donna Maylock. She wrote probably 30 books on the subject, all with beautiful photography. It's just what she did, and I've got most of her books. This is a really great book on architectural ironwork. I reference it frequently. It's got beautiful pictures. Feel free to look at that. This is the British version of the Anvil's Ring magazine, which I passed around. BABA is the British Artist Blacksmith Association, and I subscribe to their magazine. It's got a different flavor. Their stuff's way more contemporary. It's more, the European ironwork is gone more contemporary, where Americans seem to be a little bit more traditional American style.
Why do you think that is?
Well, Europe is way ahead of us in blacksmithing. I mean, we're just like beginners compared to them. You know, when we founded this country a couple hundred years ago, right? Europe had they were in their kind of industrial revolution, and everything was specialized. So there were blacksmiths that just did scissor making, and blacksmiths that just made spoons all day, and everything was specialized. There were generations of blacksmiths that did architectural gates. That's all they did, and they've got 500, 1,000, 1,200 years of history in blacksmithing. So they've evolved way past where we are. And in this country, my observation, and it's shared by some of the colonial Williamsburg blacksmiths were operated more as a repair shop. So a lot of the goods, if you go to colonial Williamsburg, they were shipping stuff over from England, right? And it would break. And so, you know, you'd have a blacksmith come over on the boat, and he was a scissor maker, and he lands in a small community where he's the only guy. He's got to learn how to do everything. So they became just like the local John T. Riemel, they had to learn how to do everything. So it wasn't super high quality stuff. It was less specialized, general repair work. And so the need for that, starting in the 1880s, declined, and blacksmithing almost disappeared in this country. And it wasn't until the blacksmith Samuel Yellin in the 1920s started this revival of blacksmithing. And there's a lineage of Samuel Yellin to Francis Whitaker to a small group of blacksmiths in 1973 that started Abana, what we know today, and that knowledge has been rekindled and saved. But yeah, Europe is, they're on a different wavelength, I think, than we are. They've got a lot more history, and they're looking to the future. They're doing a lot of contemporary stuff. One of my favorite books by Fritz Kuhn, this is kind of German ironwork, beautiful pictures, and it's got a lot of detail work that I like to reference. You know, like these flowers here, forged out of iron. And I use this book to influence my stuff quite a bit. And then real quick, over here I've got some older books. If anybody is a collector, this is a collectible set called Practical Blacksmithing. It's a 4-volume set. You can find this bound in a single edition for $7 on eBay, but this set is really difficult to find. And I was very fortunate because my dentist said, you know, I got these old books kicking around that you might be interested in. And she brought these in, and my jaw hit the floor. She gave them to me. You can't find these, and they sell for, you know, $500-600 for the set. So feel free to look at these. You're not going to hurt them. This is I already went over this, but the UK curriculum for blacksmiths. Each book has a little bit different. One is for design and techniques. This is for production and assembly. This is fundamentals. Great books. And the fundamentals book is the one that is going to be in the library here. Art of Blacksmithing by Alex Beeler. This is a classic. A lot of blacksmiths, the early blacksmiths in the 70s would have learned off of this book. Iron and Brass Implements of the English and American House. The head blacksmith at Williamsburg recommended this book to me. It's a great reference book if you like antiques. If you want to identify some old brass or iron kitchen implement, you don't know what it is, it's probably in this book. It's out of print, it's difficult to find, but every now and then I see it pop up. It's a great book. And then for those interested, this is the 1883 Day Brothers catalog, and there's some old blacksmithing tools, some really neat stuff in here, forges and drill presses and things like that were being sold in the 1880s. And you can already see kind of a transition to the automobile and to carriages and away from the Village Blacksmith and the tools that are offered in this catalog. So thank you. I think that's everything I have, and I'll mingle around, and anybody have any questions, feel free to pick up everything and look at it.
I have one more.
Yeah.
Can you say a little about women in your profession?
Yeah. We need more women in blacksmithing. Women are make incredible artists. They have a little bit of a different approach, and the female blacksmiths that I know do incredible work. They have an incredible sensitivity, and I have a part-time blacksmith helper in my shop that's a woman. Her name's Karen. She's worked with me for a year and a half or so. There's a flyer on the back table for a class at VIB by Ellen Durkin. Ellen is about my age. She's in her 30s. She is an art professor. She has a background in modeling on runways, and she's on the cutting edge of the modeling industry. And she got into blacksmithing and took it by storm and caused a bunch of controversy because she forges lingerie and dresses and simply for the purpose of doing runway shows. And she travels all over the country and does classes. She's very, very unique individual with a ton of artistic skill. We've got Jennifer Petrilla in Massachusetts that does traditional hardware. She's a farrier by day, and she does beautiful hinges and hardware by night. So Caitlin Morris is a blacksmith in Washington, D.C. area, Maryland area, and she teaches classes for beginners. Did you have anything more specific, or just?
No, I was just curious.
Yeah, we could use more. It's probably, I don't know, 2% of blacksmiths, but we could definitely use more. They offer a unique perspective, and yeah.
Folks, please join me in thanking Drew. Please stay, ask questions, look at his things. I'm sure there's more conversations to be had.
Thank you, Bev. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I realized as you were talking, I love this piece. I love it. He hasn't lined a lot of his, but it is.
Oh, yeah, that's a pretty one.
Isn't
Yeah.
that beautiful?
I'm going to turn off the mic here.
Okay, I've got Dora Bachet's first Joe. So I'm going to talk to you about it.
There you go. There you go. We need to do that.
I was sitting here trying to dream up.
I'm gonna go start with the books.
There's a little skinny side table I love to do.
I have no idea what time it is or how long that
You
took.
did perfect. It is 5 after 3. This is exactly
Perfect.
the length that we
About an hour?
typically. About an hour is about right. People need to get up and stir around, and of
Yep.
course they'll stay.
I was worried it wouldn't be long enough.
It was spot on.
Perfect. I knew I needed to allow time for questions, so.
It's
Yeah.
always interesting to me when people say I'm not a speaker.